Welcome back to another video. Today I'm reviewing Shiki, which will contain spoilers. Generally, I don't like to include spoilers in my reviews, but this is a bit of a special case here for two reasons. One of them being that Shiki is an anime which focuses on perspectives, and I really can't discuss these perspectives while dodging spoilers. I'd end up not really saying anything, and two, because I feel that Shiki features several messages which speak much louder than the story itself. Shiki is a 22-episode supernatural mystery thriller set within a small secluded village within Japan. This story begins once a group of mysterious outsiders move into this town into a giant European-style castle which stands out like a sore thumb. The majority of characters are very shallow. A few were lucky enough to receive bare bones characterization, but Shiki is an anime which focuses on the masses rather than the individual. In addition to characters directly telling us about themselves, they assist in establishing culture or village history, which in turn assists with world building as well as establishing the mystery by discussing the inexplicable virus and by voicing the reaction of the remainder of the village. They often represent more than just themselves, usually being a specific set of ideals or morals. Regardless of how much screen time any are given, I really don't find any significant enough to be labeled as a main character. I'd recommend paying most attention to the changing mindset of the masses. There are times when characters' actions will create ripple effects which cause lasting changes within their society and in turn progress the plot.
I'll be discovered by a talent scout, and I'll spend my nights hanging out in clubs!
In the beginning of the story, the majority of the characters are accustomed to having this quiet, simple country life where everybody goes to church, there is no crime, nobody needs to lock their doors or anything like that, and they have such a rich history with 100-year-old traditions. But of course, with such a small town and great reputation, this is bound to attract a few outsiders, such as the case with the Natsuno family, which represent the skeptic mindset, which is a great thing to see that there are different viewpoints accommodated for here, but there are times when their rationality would really cloud their judgment when we're dealing with vampires here. Obviously, they're not going to believe it, even though all of the evidence points towards it. And I really can't blame them because, you know, vampires.
Quick question. Do you know what happened to all the crosses in my room?
Yeah, I threw them away. They're gone.
You did?
They don't belong in this house. You know how I feel about superstitious religious stuff, don't you?
Who believes in vampires? Really? But out of all of these characters that really stand out within this village, I would have to say that Megumi really sticks out the most because she's a total narcissist that just wants the best of everything, and she can't get it because she's in such a small country town that's in the middle of nowhere. She thinks that everybody there is just some dirty old country bumpkin, so needless to say, she doesn't get along with many people. Now, while these characters are definitely lacking in detail, Shiki takes the information and just spreads it so thin that it reaches all the way across the town, and even by a few episodes in, it already feels as if you're watching a real town somewhere. It feels like it's alive. After the initial world building, the plot speeds up a bit and begins to focus on a small group of individual characters, which then become divided by classifications of human and Shiki, rather than being simply classified as good or evil. Protagonist or antagonist characters are classified by their moral standings. What I find really interesting about Shiki is watching the mindset of two separate cultures develop over the span of the story. Underneath this growing conflict between the humans and vampires, Shiki features a bit of a social commentary featuring numerous themes such as war, morality, alienation, equality of life, and so on. There are many things here that I feel that Shiki is trying to tell me, but I just haven't picked up on it yet because I need to watch it that one more time. Shiki is an anime that I recommend you watch your first time by yourself, and then you get with a group of friends who are willing to disagree with you on many things, and then watching it again with them and just discussing what you're finding. As we know from the beginning of the story, the villagers are strongly against murder, and that's kind of obvious, as I would assume that everybody is against murder. But we see that they are living in a town without crime, and everybody goes to church and everything. So when people are given the information that would lead them to the discovery of the vampires themselves, most people kind of just brush it off and live in denial.
And what did everybody else in the village do about it? They said it was strange and then sat on their hands waiting for someone to find an answer. Well, I found one. But they yammered on about rationalism and dismissed me without considering it. Just like that.
It's like they're all in shock. They see everybody in the village just dying around them, and it's just consuming everybody around them, and they just kind of hole up inside of themselves and they think, okay, this is just gonna go away, you know, we've lived this peaceful life for so long, and now it's getting to the point where it really is serious, and they don't know how to react. It isn't until a few characters forcibly expose the reality of Shiki to the remainder of the village that a few select brave villagers stand up and avenge the death of their loved ones. As the plot progresses into the second half of the story, we find many villagers who are less reluctant to kill Shiki, and that's when things get ugly. Eventually it gets to the point where they even justify killing other humans that are either A, under the control of Shiki, or B, simply support the Shiki and don't think that we should be killing them all en masse like this. And it really does feel like a war where everybody is fighting for survival, where we have characters who are fighting against other family members, we have giant men chasing around little vampire girls with these giant mallets just trying to smash them, and it's pretty gruesome. It eventually devolves to the point where they have such little value for the life of others that they're in groups singing songs while slaughtering every Shiki they can find, just like they're cleaning the house or just doing some sort of group effort here. And it really is barbaric, and it makes you take a step back and look at the larger picture and think about how just a few episodes these people were their neighbors, they were their children, and as a society they stood up against this sort of thing, and now they're just ruthlessly killing. While Shiki was intentionally visceral, there were a few problems which held it back from reaching its full potential. One of these problems is that there is simply no balance between the two sides, and considering that this is a story that pushes the message of equality of life, you would expect there to be some sort of balance between the two, as they often went on about how humans eat animals and Shiki eating humans is really no different than that. It's just a different level of the food chain, and all of the life is equal in that aspect. But it doesn't really do that because it endlessly victimizes the Shiki so that you feel for them. But of course, being a human isn't exactly a cakewalk within Shiki either, as they have to watch all of their loved ones die and grieve for them, as well as protect and defend their own lives. But ultimately, they survive in the end, if we're talking about numbers here. The Shiki, on the other hand, are all born as human. They live as humans and they die as humans, but the process of death for them is something that is long and excruciatingly painful for them. It's something that lasts about a week, and they're just bedridden, they have no energy whatsoever. It's not a good thing that they go through. They die, if they rise up, they experience the fear of being buried alive, as they have to claw their way out of the grave 6 feet underground, and then they're stuck with the guilt of having to consume what was once either their neighbors, their friends, or maybe their family members, who ultimately will try and torture them or kill them. Don't get me wrong, all of this is reasonable for the Shiki within the confines of the story, but yet they continue to tip the scales against the Shiki until they break. We have the character of Tatsumi, who inhibits any form of peaceful resolution here. He's a character that tries to keep them in line. I assume that he's been a Shiki for quite some time, and he knows how people will react to him. He's probably tired of being hunted for so long, so he threatens all of the new recruits, basically, that if they don't start killing people and consuming the blood of everyone around them and turning more people into Shiki, that he's going to kill their family members. Or if they try to run away, then he's going to find them in the daytime when they're asleep and kill them, because he is one of the select few characters who can actually walk in the daylight. The whole Jinro variation of the Shiki blood took away from the whole experience, because there were some characters that were immune to many of the weaknesses that the Shiki had. And then, of the 3 Jinro that we see within the story, there was only one of them that I felt was interesting. At the end of the anime, the monk character Seishin undergoes this very fortuitous transformation into a Jinro, which was also at a very symbolic time when considering the story that he was told. Now, this story in itself, aside from being symbolic for this moment, it also has connections with the relationship between Shiki and humans as well. The story that he's telling is very disjointed and spread throughout the story, so if you don't really pay attention to it when he's telling it, then you might overlook a few details which are not really that relevant to the major plot, honestly. As for the remaining Jinro of Tatsumi and Natsuno, I felt that their presence within the story to be detrimental as a whole, because they kind of pull the strings at certain times behind the scenes, and I would like to see these events unfold naturally without a character which is kind of immune to all of the weaknesses that they have. Shiki ends in a way that gives the viewer some form of understanding of what happens, while also leaving a few open ends to deny the viewer any form of closure, because it seems as if they don't want you to say, okay, that's over, that's it, what's next now? It wants you to step back and reflect on everything that's happened, so that you can actually think about what you saw and also think about the messages that are being sent.
After all that, the village is still gonna die. I guess I lost now, didn't I?
Is that it? Wins and losses? This isn't a game.
No, you're right.
There are many people who have a similar problem with Shiki, including myself. That is, it is a slow-paced anime, which honestly wasn't as bad my second time around, but it's a bit slow in the beginning as they give you information about the community that we're being introduced to, but then after a few episodes it really picks up its pace and it's not really that big of an issue. If you're finding that Shiki has very slow pacing and it's hard for you to get into, then try watching it in the dub. I found it to be a much easier watch when I viewed it with a dub as well. Moving on to the presentation, Shiki features this very unique art style where it has very abnormally large eyes for these characters, and I'm talking about abnormal for anime characters large, so you know they're massive, and also the hair to it. It's almost as if people in the village haven't discovered or imported the comb yet, where it's just like it's all over the place. The entire town suffers from bedhead, and some are worse than others, honestly, like the one guy who runs the inn there, or the brewery or whatever. People go there and drink, and his beard is just all over the place, and his eyebrows, they're just crazy. Everybody there is suffering from a constant state of bedhead. Moving on to the music, the soundtrack present here really works when considering the emotions and the tones present at the times, but it was never anything that really stood out and grabbed my attention and made me want to listen to it again, aside from the opening and closings, which I really enjoyed. Now, of course, as for the voice acting, I've already mentioned this, the dub really isn't that bad. If you would prefer to watch it sub, then go right ahead. The same thing goes if you'd rather watch a dub. However, I would have to say that if you're looking for a more accurate translation, to just go with a sub, and sometimes that is more important in a show where you're thinking about details. As for my final score, I give Shiki an 8 out of 10. While it has its problems with its pacing and there's simply too many characters here, it's also one of the rare anime, or one of the rare stories in general, that honestly take vampires seriously and create a dramatic story with them. If you've seen Shiki, let me know your thoughts about it in the comment section below. If you enjoyed this video, please remember to subscribe, as well as like, comment, and also share it with your friends if you really enjoyed the video. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time when I review Your Lie in April.